Do they even understand what the Green Corridor means? Hello, I'm Dr. Sam, this is Dr. Sam's Health. I continue making my videos about the war in Ukraine. Unfortunately, I cannot switch to something more normal, like health, science, exercise, diet, nutrition, as this war goes on. Today is July 24th, 2022, and it means that this war started 5 months ago, and I did not see it ending anytime soon. Actually, there were quite a few quite interesting developments, and I would like to talk about them today. Prior to doing so, obviously, I'll make my regular disclaimers, which are, first, I'm a medical doctor, but I do not give any kind of medical advice over YouTube or on social media. I do not give out any kind of diagnosis. I do not provide any kind of medical opinions. And essentially, any opinions that I offer here are here just for educational or entertainment purposes. And I also assume that at certain points, when I'm talking about the war, I might offend somebody, might hurt somebody's feelings, and I'm not making these videos for that. I'm just trying to convey my more or less informed opinion to people who speak English. And there is a huge audience, and I'm afraid that lots of people of the world do not get good sources of information. They are watching mass media, and these mass media experts, in my opinion, are not always correct or aware of lots of nuances, the ones that I'm aware as somebody who lived in Ukraine for many years, and I was born there. Anyhow, I've done my disclaimers. Let's talk about the issue at hand, which is, I think for the first time in the history of Russian-Ukrainian conflict, not only this war, but I'm talking about 8 years of war on Donbass, the annexion of Crimea, this 5 months of actual war, Ukrainian troops have surrounded a large body of Russian troops. By different sources of information, it might be up to 2,000 armed, fully loaded Russian troops, which is unusual. And again, I think it's the first time in this history, in modern history, that something like this happens. And right now, Russian troops are requesting Green Corridor to be able to evacuate from this situation. A couple of things that I have to say. First of all, I don't think that they understand what Green Corridor means, which is usually something that has been provided to civilians so they can leave dangerous areas without being shot. But also, I have to mention a lot of history. So, first of all, there were quite a few periods or moments in this current conflict, like I'm talking about the past 5 months, when civilians were provided with Green Corridor and they were attacked by Russian troops. There were periods or moments, especially in Mariupol, when civilians were not provided Green Corridor. There were periods and moments when civilians were provided Green Corridor, but it was conditional. They would have to evacuate towards Russia. And that is very inhumane tactic or strategy implemented by Russians. And ultimately, if you go back to the war on Donbass, this long lasting 8 years of conflict, there were at least a couple of very terrible episodes when Ukrainian troops were surrounded. They call it cauldrons in Ilovaisk and Debaltseva. There are two places. Large quantities of Ukrainian troops were surrounded by Russians. They were provided some sort of a passage, given that they would drop their weapons and just like walk out. And during this evacuation or attempt to surrender, Russian troops would ruthlessly attack them and kill them. And both events were quite tragic. And obviously, at this point, some people who are listening to Russian propaganda will disagree with me and say that it was a lie. I objectively do not have any means of verifying it or proving it. I tend to believe Ukrainian troops in this kind of situation. I'm pretty sure that it might be way more nuanced that we even can imagine, but the fact in my mind is that there were at least two occasions when Ukrainian troops were allowed to walk out of one of the cauldrons, and they were annihilated by Russian troops. There was like artillery strikes and so on. and hundreds, if not thousands, of men died for nothing, without given a chance to even fight back. So that is the history of that. And right now we've got a situation which is the reverse of it. When Russian troops are surrounded, they're asking for green corridor. Obviously, nobody's going to give them green corridor because it's not what is usually offered to military personnel. But I think that in this situation, Ukrainian troops should offer them a chance to surrender. And I have heard a lot of voices from all kinds of people, politicians, military advisors, any kind of public figures in different, well, mostly like Ukrainian internet uh, side of internet, when people are talking about the fact that there should be no mercy to Russians. And I think that it's a very faulty logic. And that's essentially what I would like to talk about today. I hear a lot of people talking about things which are terrible. Like, I understand we hate Russians at this point, but, there are normal Russian people. There are Russian people who don't want this war, they just do not know how to stop it. There are people who are oppressed by Russian regime. Of course, there are people who have voted for Putin, but they didn't even think that something like this could happen. Unfortunately, I think he has a huge support in Russia, no matter what. But these people are blinded by Russian propaganda. And obviously, there are people who hate Ukraine, people who are supporting Russia in this war from Russian side. It is terrible, but still, even these people, they did not deserve some sort of a ill-hearted revenge from Ukrainian side. We hate them right now, but we have lived together for many, many centuries, and like I hear people talking about, stop and speak in Russian, completely rejecting everything Russian, everything that is made in Russia, Russian literature, Russian ballet, you name it. If it is made in Russia, it has anything to do with Russia. Some Ukrainians, actually many of Ukrainians, they hate it at this point, that they don't want it becoming part of their culture. They actually want to eradicate everything Russian from Ukrainian school, education, and so on. I think it is wrong. I think it is wrong because there is certain person in Kremlin or in his bunker, there is certain government, oligarchs, like obviously thousands of people who are running this terrible show. There are tens of thousands of Russian troops that are doing ridiculous things in Ukraine. But it doesn't mean that we have to get to this level. Primitive, tribalistic, cold-hearted, or overly like bullheaded approach when we say attack civilian objects on Russian territory. Like my city, Kharkiv, has been bombarded or attacked from the areas close to the city of Belgorod, very close to Kharkiv in Russia. And a lot of people are saying, if they are doing this from Belgorod, why can't we attack Belgorod? So the fact that Russians are doing these terrible things doesn't mean that we are this kind of people who would do the opposite to some people who have never done anything wrong. People of Belgorod, there are children there. I don't want anybody to send a missile to Belgorod to even kill one child. It would be terrible. It would be a terrible thing, and it would be a terrible thing from the political standpoint, from the international recognition standpoint, from any kind of humanitarian or even logical standpoint. There is a Russian army, they're invading us, we want to fight them off. We want our territory and we don't want their territory. We don't want to increase suffering. By doing this kind of things, we will only put a huge stain on the reputation of Ukrainian people and Ukraine as a country. We can only lose support from other countries, which has been generously provided to us. And getting back to this situation with this cauldron right now, I hope that Russian troops will be wise enough to surrender their arms and to surrender. And I hope that Ukrainian troops will not do anything that would count or look like a war crime. I hope that Ukrainian troops will allow Russians to surrender. They will show them all the military respect or follow the military protocols, they will take the prisoners of war, exchange them for some of our men and women who have been captured on, say, Azovstal and Mariupol, or any other Ukrainian forces that have been held as prisoners of war. And again, and again, and again, I hope that this war will end soon. And I hope that this kind of cauldron, this kind of situation, is actually a good indicator that the tide of war has changed. And Ukraine is beginning to recapture, regain its own territories. We'll see how it ends. I hope it will end soon. Obviously, I've made a video about the mathematical expectations in terms of what's going to happen. They're not as optimistic as my hopes are, but nevertheless, as they say in Russia and Ukraine, hope dies last. So that was everything I wanted to say. Please hit the like button. Help me make these videos more visible by liking them, leaving comments, making suggestions. If you want to talk about anything in my videos, you might consider certain things that I say not to be fully accurate, or you got some good explanations or additions to whatever I'm talking about. Please leave these comments, share these videos with your friends or colleagues via any kind of social media. I would like these videos to be more visible, more kind of afloat, and eventually I hope that Ukraine will win this war, will regain its territories, and the peace will be reestablished. And I hope that it will happen soon. And I'll be able to talk about my things like health, nutrition, diet, exercise, and so on. So that's my spiel for today. I'll see you in my next video. All the very best.